So I hear that you found this pretty interesting link on Reddit that you wanted to talk about. Let me pull it up.
Yeah, what I liked about this question in the community is it's somewhat common, but from some of our customers in terms of those trying Plumi out in their enterprise. Maybe they're a DevOps team or a platform team, and they're trying to evangelize Plumi within their org, right? If they go to a network ops team that's a little more traditional, or like sort of a sysadmin team that's learning to become a DevOps team, commonly we'll just get asked these questions like, well, how much programming do I need to know? Do I need to be a software engineer to use Plumi? Love to hear, your experience being new to Plumi as well.
Yeah, I feel like it's a fear that people, especially if they came, from kind of like a sysop place, they might have this fear that like, oh, they're not truly programmers. I just think that's not the case. It's just like it's just things that we fear because we get put in a box, right? Like I was back in engineering, I didn't do ops stuff, and that was always so confusing to me and hard, right? And I didn't understand, especially like the networking layer that well. And so I think that it's weird to hear for me, like these people who probably understand, like the networking stuff so well, be afraid of just like doing some Python, right? Especially when
Yeah,
I've definitely seen ops people in my day like whip up crazy scripts and bash and solve like really complicated problems. Uh,
yeah,
yeah, so I
yeah,
feel
totally.
like sorry, yeah, why don't you share your story? Because I think it's pretty interesting and relates.
Yeah, you just reminded me of one of my favorite customer quotes where their internal platform team has a mantra of just like automate everything, right? And if you started more traditional background in network operations or system engineering, you've been automating, your entire career, and you're just swapping out Bash now for Python, right? And I think the barrier of entry to learning Python with modern tools like copilots, and want to share here some interesting things we're doing with Plumi Copilot. That barrier to entry to learn is quite so much lower than it was if I had the superpowers of copilots when I started my career. It would have been so amazing, but now that sort of renaissance of modern developer tools and tooling and ecosystems can apply to everyone, and you can learn these things. It's absolutely a skill you can learn.
Yeah, and I feel like I wanna show an example, but, like, did you ever have this feeling where you felt like you didn't like, it's almost like this fear, like, "Oh, I don't know this area, I'm not one of those people." Have you ever experienced that?
Oh yeah, totally. Like I remember trying to build some automation at REI where it worked at the time. I was a sort of a network and server admin, and effectively I just beat my head against a brick wall for like half a day trying to get my scripts to work the way I wanted them to work to automate something. I ended up pulling a buddy of mine who was a back end software engineer that lived a couple cubes down. And I was like, Doug, come over. What am I doing wrong? And of course, he spotted it in 5 seconds. It was something simple that I just didn't have my head wrapped around. But
Yeah, I remember, like, I was back in engineer and I had written this quite complicated thing and it got rolled out to a very big client. And like, we actually had the data center where things were hosted was on site. And then all of a sudden, this one client they were like at 100% CPU across all the cores, and like somebody in ops came and got me and was like, "What do we do?" And I was like, "I don't know. I just write the code. I don't actually know." Right. And then there was a DBA who I knew, and he came and he was like looking at things and he's like, "Oh, we just need an index here." Right. And everything was solved, and it seemed so magical to me. But it's just I hadn't done that. Right. And I think
yeah,
it's the same with programming. In fact, yeah, let me show you how to do that. Right. So what should I show, James? So I've logged in to app.pulumi.com and we have this
yeah, yeah.
great copilot here.
Yeah, effectively, for free, and within about 30, 45 seconds here, you can log into Plumi for free for a trial for individual use, and you're going to get access to Plumi Copilot, which is a lot more than just your standard sort of chat GPT. We're basically there's sort of a custom training involved. There's custom embeddings and APIs we're calling to enable Plumi Copilot to basically be a graph to your infrastructure. But in its earliest phase, it's just a helpful copilot like any of the other copilots you've seen floating around, and maybe you've tried, of course, on your own. So you can ask it simple questions like, "How do I create something in let's say Python as an example?" So let's maybe see create an S3 bucket using Python.
Sorry, typing while talking is not my
That's all
skill.
right.
How do I create an S3 bucket in Python?
Yeah.
Uh,
And Pulumi Copilot's going to reach out for a series of skills that we've trained it on and created around this, and it's going to give you some working Pulumi code. You can copy and paste this code into your, IDE of choice. You can do these things from your CLI,
oops.
and you will effectively be building your first little bit of Pulumi software.
Yeah, I feel like, opinions are mixed on AI. I really feel like it's great training wheels. I know how to create an S3 bucket if I were to just go into AWS and click on it, right? But this is helping me get started with how to do it, using infrastructure as code and using Python, which I'm a big fan of. So yeah, don't be afraid to learn programming. It's not as hard as it might seem. All right, James, thanks for bringing this to me. I think it's super interesting.
Yeah, take care of that.